Welcome back, everybody. This is Brother Mutant here. Today we are finishing up our War Priest spells. This is part 3 of a 3-part series of videos. We are talking about the War Priest spells that are available thanks to the Eldritch Arcana mod as well as the Call of the Wild mod. So if you're not on PC, sadly this video isn't for you. You can't even access this class. Sorry about that, but you should probably join the PC nation like the rest of us and really have some fun with these games. But I wanted to talk about the spells, what I like about them, uses that I might have for them. So again, we're now on levels 5 and 6 spells, which is the highest the War Priest gets. Now, I have been investigating whether or not these are the exact same spells as the Cleric. So far as I can tell, they appear to be the same. I want to go through the list once more, just to prove to myself that there's not like a hidden spell that's unique or different for a Cleric. If there is, of course, we'll talk about it when we finally get around to doing Cleric spells. But if the level 0 through 6 spells are the same, then I'm basically just going to refer to these videos when we talk about the Cleric. And then we'll jump right into level 7, 8, and 9 spells for them, respectively. So today, again, when you're talking about level 5 and 6, let's actually show you the list for level 5. Level 5 spells include Angelic Aspect, Bone Shatter, Serenity, Break Enchantment, Breath of Life, Burst of Glory, Cleanse, Constricting Coils, Mass Cure Light Wounds, as well as Mass Inflict Light Wounds, Disrupting Weapon, Flame Strike, Genie Kind, Sacred Nimbus, as well as Profane Nimbus, Raise Dead, Righteous Might, Slay Living, Spell Resistance, Summon Large Elemental, Summon Monster 5, True Seeing, Vine Trap, Greater Command, Major Curse, Communal Airwalk, Wall of Blindness, Fickle Winds. Now notice that I have, just like we've done in the previous videos, broken things down based on the school. That's what the little code behind them in parentheses means. So a lowercase t is for transmutation. We have I for illusion, which are none. Necromancy spells are N. Conjuration spells are C. You get the general idea. Notice that V is for evocation, whereas E is for enchantment. I went alphabetical and V sticks out in my head as evocation. So that's why I did it that way. Notice at the bottom of the list we have a couple things of note. We not only have a list of spells based on the school, but we also have them based on if there a saving throw or something similar associated with them. If you look at the list above, anything underlined has a saving throw associated with it, or something similar, like an athletics check or a strength-based check, something that basically will override the spell or help them get out of the spell or lessen its effect. You get the general idea. Anything with an asterisk next to it, as far as the spell is concerned, refers to the fact that that spell does not have spell resistance, which is extremely important for those people that want something that will just say, fuck it, I need to do damage, or whatever, have an effect, where I don't have to worry about, oh, do they have a high spell resistance? Gee, am I strong enough to actually overcome that spell resistance? You don't have to worry on those spells, because they just straight up work. The exception to the rule is there's plenty of ways to be immune to effects that have nothing to do with spell resistance. So grain of salt with that. But I thought it was important enough to draw my attention to it, so I figured I'd do the same for you guys. Notice that, again, the reason I put this down at the bottom for the type of school, as well as how many spells, as well as in parentheses how many spells with saving throws, that's more for me, but you can use it as well. For example, I use it for, do I need to, say, a spell focus in a specific type of school? For example, Conjuration makes a strong showing. There's 6 spells at this level, 3 of which have a saving throw. Same with Necromancy, 5 spells, and all 5 have a saving throw. That's a really good chance then for you to make, say, a Necrolord using War Priest spells, if you want, say, spell focus, a Necromancy, so you can get a little bump to the DC check. And that's the reason I do stuff like this. So let's move on to each individual spell, shall we? Angelic Aspect is a really nice buff. It has a lot of things going for it, so let's talk about some of the positives. First off, the acid and cold resistance is nice. It's not amazing at this level, but a straight up ignore 10 points of damage from all acid attacks and cold attacks is pretty useful. And then you can say that the DR5/evil is kind of lackluster, and yes, that's true. However, remember we have the ability to layer protections, and make sure we're clear on this. For something like Stone Skin, a spell that gives DR10 against physical damage, /adamantine. The /adamantine refers to the fact that anything that is an adamantine weapon penetrates that DR10. It does not impact it at all. So again, an adamantine weapon, which are rare, would be something that would go right through your Stone Skin and would not benefit you at all to have Stone Skin on. But now notice this one. If they do have adamantine and you had this spell on as well, DR5/evil, yes, it's not 10, but it is still some protection from bludgeoning or piercing or slashing attacks. And only if it's an evil weapon, that's what the /evil means. If it's an evil weapon, will it penetrate that. Now, of course, if someone has an adamantine evil weapon, you're kind of boned. But then there's probably another spell out there that we could use to buff ourselves in a way where evil and adamantine isn't the way to penetrate the DR. And again, to be real clear on this, for when we talk about layers of protection, the DR10s from Stone Skin and the DR5 from this don't stack. You don't get a 15. You get a 10 or a 5 or nothing. Why do I say that? Because literally it takes the best in every scenario. So if the DR10 would work, it'll take the 10. If the DR10 is ignored because it's, again, an adamantine weapon, then the DR5 kicks in. That's what I mean by layers of protection. This is routinely a way I will build the character to make sure I have multiple ways of ensuring that less damage is coming in to a character, especially someone like a War Priest who's going to be in up front ranks, if you will. Notice that it gets a bonus to deflection for your character as well as a bonus to saves against spells and spell-like effects created from evil creatures. Basically, this is protection from evil spell. It has a nice duration, and of course it even gives you one step further in that it changes your weapon to be a good aligned weapon for purposes of, again, overcoming damage reduction. So again, if we talk about the DR5 evil, if someone had the same thing but it's a DR5/good, your weapon would be considered good and would ignore that damage reduction, and that's the appeal here. They also make a point of pointing out how you get feathery wings, allowing you to fly. I've tested this, I believe, and I don't believe that this provides you any kind of buff, any benefit. You don't go faster, you don't ignore ground-based effects. At least I didn't notice anything. So I think that's just for showing, not for blowing. So it's one of those where they just added it. And again, angelic aspect, you have wings. I mean, it kind of makes sense. But don't think that it's giving you wings that will give you dodge or extra speed or anything like that. Something like an actual fly spell would. Bone Shatter. This is an amazing spell. This is the big brother version of Bone Shaker. And again, it has a okay range. The fact that you can shoot it is at least helpful. Close range is not that impressive. But it's an auto hit power, which of course you have to love. And the fact that it literally does damage even if they make this save is really nice. And it's not a reflex save, it's a fortitude save. While there is in this game ways for people that can do fortitude saves and lessen the damage to nothing, that's rare. So I'm not too worried about the fact that that could be an issue. I do like the fact that it is a solid necromancy spell, and I love the fact that even if they make the save, not only do they take half damage, there's still an effect associated with it besides damage. They become fatigued. If they fail their save, they take full damage, and they're exhausted. So again, I love the fact that there's a really nice mechanic associated with this spell. Remember, when we're talking about fatigue or exhausted, that's a penalty to strength and dex. Fatigue is a -2 for both of them, and exhausted is a -6. Now, of course, they could be immune to those effects, so that's always a thing. But if they're not, that's a big screw you to the bad guy. Remember, you're lowering their damage, their chance of hitting you. It doesn't matter what kind of attacker they are, because literally their strength and dex is down. So they literally do not have the two stats that are really associated with attacking, whether it's ranged, whether it's weapon finessing, whether it's power attacking, whether it's a thrown weapon, where they're using their strength for extra damage. You're screwing them over their chance to hit and their damage. And of course, exhausted being the better of the two choices here. So it's a solid spell. And again, I would heavily slot this spell just to have something where I'm like, you know what, that guy just needs to take some damage. And that's what we're going to do here. Serenity, another spell that I'm warming up to. When I played Magus, this was one that I shied away from the longest time. I'm starting to dig it. This is an interesting spell in that it's AoE, for positive things. It's AoE, it's teammate friendly, so you can cast it on a cluster pile right at your feet. Nothing wrong with that. Has a decent range, so you can start off the fight at a distance, and anybody that literally gets affected by it. So it is a save or suck spell. If they fail that save, anytime they attack, or each round I should say, that they attack, they will take 3d6 of damage. And I want to say it's like magic damage, so it's not something that's heavily resisted. So it straight up screws them every time that they do this. Now, you may say, well, how does this differ from all those spells you were telling us in the past that you hate? You know, the ones where if they hit me, they take damage. Well, they don't have to hit you. They just have to attack you. So what I mean is, if they shoot an arrow, let's say, at your direction, and they whiff, they still take 3d6 of damage because they tried to attack you, which is freaking cool. And it's not just you, it's you, your team, your pets, anything. So again, I can have skeleton armies out there where they're just like, oh, screw the skeleton, and they're swinging and destroying your Skeletors, right? But they're taking 3d6 of damage just for attempting to swing at the Skeletors. So you can see the appeal of this spell. Now, yes, it is a save or suck spell, and I usually hate those. Remember, though, this is two things that are going for it. One, it's AoE, and 2, it's teammate friendly. So you don't have to worry about placement. Just get as many bad guys in the circle as possible. And the reason that's important is because while 1 or 2 or even 3 may pass the check, 1 or more is probably going to fail it. Especially if you go enchantment build. I'm not saying you would, but you could. And enchantment actually does make a pretty decent showing in War Priest spells. It seems kind of weird, but it's what it is. And this is a solid spell. It's not epic damage. And again, the fact that it has to tick every round, and is there ways for the bad guys to ignore the damage? Sure, they cannot attack. So if you're casting on, say, bad guys in the back ranks that are like buffing up for like the first 3 rounds, well, you kind of wasted your spell there, right? Because they're not attacking, they're just buffing up. If they're literally positioning themselves in a way where they're not attacking, again, they're not doing anything that round, so it's not taking any damage. So yeah, there's ways around it, but it's not like they're going to be actively trying to say, oh, I'm not going to attack because I know I'm going to take damage. No, they're still going to shoot as soon as they can. So that's still a thing. Break Enchantment. Another really nice spell. This is one that would definitely slot at least once for its high utility. It basically neuters enchantments, transmutation, and curses from level 5 on down. What does that mean? You are affected, or a teammate is affected by this. You get near them, you activate the spell, and boom, you do a check to try to overcome, basically dispel, if you will, the enchantment, the transmutation, or the curses. Of course, this is only negative ones that are impact you in a negative way. So you're not removing your buffs, as far as I can tell. So there is that, so that's nice. But let's think about what curses and enchantments are. So curses is pretty straightforward and obvious. Enchantments, again, usually pretty straightforward. You know what type of spells we're talking about, but you don't usually think about transmutations as being a hindrance, right? Well, think about some of the transmutation spells that are out there that could impact you or your team. Slow is a transmutation spell, and therefore this could remove the effect without having to use something like, say, haste to just counter it. Save your haste for when you can actually buff up instead of just countering a slow spell. Transmutations also include things like Baleful Polymorph, where you literally get turned into a dog. Now, the downside of that is if you're a dog, you can't cast a spell. But remember, this is AoE, and if your teammate gets turned into the dog, you can run over next to him or her, and poof, they're back being normal. So again, you can see the appeal here. Now again, the fact that it's limited to level 5 spells or lower is kind of a bummer, but for what it does, it's a really, really nice spell to have. In my opinion, this would be one that you would really want to have at least slotted once. And again, if you never use it, that's fine. Use it to convert into a heal spell. Nothing wrong with that. But I'd still want to keep it in my tray. It'd be one of those where I'd probably save it till the end of the day, or if I just really need that last ditch effort heal, then I'll finally convert it. But this is a solid spell. And again, can't stress enough the importance of the fact that this is AoE, as well as tied to your caster level. So the higher your caster level, the better chance you are of breaking these effects. And which again is extremely appealing. The real caveat here is because you're going to have to be keeping track of your team to find out who is enchanted, transmuted, or cursed. Now, sometimes it's obvious. They're attacking you. Well, something's going on wrong. The chances are it's an enchantment. They're confused. That's an enchantment spell. And they're basically attacking. So you can probably see that in the pop-up tip as well. But if not, you're really going to have to get really familiar with looking at the pop-up tips on the portraits of your characters at the bottom. So they always have next to their, scrolling down the side of their faces, all those little buffs, as well as debuffs. Those debuffs include things like, are they under a specific curse or an enchantment or a transmutation? And that's where you're going to find that stuff and say, oh shit, we got hit with a slow spell. Run into, or walk at that point, into the middle of your group, fire off this bad boy, and everybody's not slowed anymore. You see the appeal for a spell like this. Breath of Life. This one is another spell that's not only a good heal/damaging spell. There's another one that's very similar to this coming at level 6, so I'm going to refer back to this one. So keep this in the back of your head here, because this is going to be just a repeat later on. There's more to the other spell, obviously, as it's level 6, but it's the same general theme that you're going to see here. We actually have the ability to heal with it. We have the ability to damage undead with it. We have the ability to raise the dead with it, which is really, really nice. So we literally have the ability, if they've died within 2 rounds, and we have the ability to get to them and touch them on the shoulder, you have the ability to straight up just whoop, and they're back up off their ground. Now, that's not to say they're going to be in pristine form. They're going to have a temporary negative level because it's stressful to die and be brought back to life. So it's not surprising, but it's only a negative level, and it's a temp one. So again, not the biggest problem. The reason I point this out to you, though, if you have a teammate that's routinely dying, and you have, like, say, Breath of Life slotted, let's say 3-4 times, just because you know it's a good spell. Sure, that's a good spell, and yeah, that person, you can, if you catch them quick enough, poof, they're back on. I'm looking right at you, Octavia. Yep, freaking weak-kneed bitch. She dies all the time. So it's one of those where you're like, oh, that's no big deal. I got Breath of Life. Get back up, Octavia. And again, she's healed-ish, and you can heal her from that point on, of course, too, to get her back to topped off. The problem is if she dies routinely in a combat, whether it's that round, or not that round, excuse me, that fight, or the next room, or basically that dungeon, remember, she's stacking negative levels every time you res her. So you're like, why is she dying? Why does she suck so bad? Well, it's because she's probably 3 or 4 levels lower than she should be because of the temp negative levels. Keep an eye on that shit. And again, I don't think Lesser Restoration takes that away, but I believe Restoration does. And certainly Greater Restoration, Heal, and other spells will remove those negative levels. So keep stuff like that handy as well, is my advice to you. Notice it does not work on spells or on targets that have been killed because of a quote-unquote death effect. The best that I can describe this is if you're looking at a spell and the descriptor of the spell is death, that's probably what we're talking about here. The instant kill stuff is a fine example, but it's not the only quote-unquote death spells in the game. But this is still something of note, so keep an eye on stuff like that. And again, the 2-round time limit where literally if they've died and you weren't paying attention or you didn't get there fast enough, because again, it is a range of touch, kind of sucks, then you might not be able to cross the battlefield to get to them, to res them in time, forcing you to use a different spell like Raise Dead, for example, which is more pricey. Burst of Glory. It's a decent spell. As much as I don't like this spell, most of it's coming from the fact that the duration kind of sucks, but really as a level 5 spell, you're actually, let's see, level 1, 4, 7, 10, 13. You're level 13 plus by now for War Priest. So you're getting it for a decent amount of time, at least a fight. So there's nothing wrong with that. I don't like the 10-foot burst area. It means you have to be really tightly clustered, which means probably you're firing it off at the very start of a combat. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. Who doesn't like temp HP? Who doesn't like bonus to their saves? And who doesn't like a bonus to their attack rolls? And those 2 bonuses we just talked about at the end there are sacred bonuses, not morale bonuses. So they'll stack with things like Bless. So there is some fun to be had here. It's just not the spell that I'm looking at going, wow, we're swinging +1 better. I guess, yay, it's definitely a plus, I suppose. And I like the temp HP. That's probably the real selling point here, is that maybe you get to absorb the first arrow to the chest kind of thing, or at least lessen its effect a little bit. So again, you can see the appeal of the spell. It's just not something that I'm going to really heavily slot. Maybe I'll grab it once just to toy around with it, and then more likely than not get turned into a healing spell. Healing spells now. Cleanse, oh my god. For a self-healing spell, this is an amazing one. Not only does it heal a metric shit ton of damage, which is fucking awesome, it also removes from you all kinds of conditions. Notice that I have nauseated here in a question mark next to its name. We'll talk about that in a sec. But the laundry list of stuff that you're removing is fucking amazing. The healing, just to point out the 4d8, of course, that means that there's a die roll. That means it can be empowered. That means it can be maximized. That's always a possibility. Now, I'm not saying you're going to do that because you can only cast level 5 and 6 spells as highest. You can go. So you're not doing that probably with empowered or maximized. But you can use Metamagic Rods, for example, to increase your healing in that regard. Notice also that it caps out per caster level at 25. Well, there's no level 25 caster level, brother. I mean, what the hell's going on? Well, first, this is pen and paper. 2, the other, this is coming from pen and paper, to be clear. 2, this is also a spell that you can increase your caster level beyond 20 by being fiddly. Like a piece of gear can give you like a +4 to all your cure spells for your caster level. So you can be technically level 24 just by wearing those, I think they're gloves. For example, you could also get, say, Spell Focus in Evocation, because this is an Evocation school spell. One of the few heals that is an Evocation, which is kind of trippy. But notice something else. This also means that if you say Spell Focus Evocation, you can also get Spell Specialization and pick Cleanse as your spell to focus on. Why is that important? That gives you 2 caster levels higher than your caster level for purposes of this spell. So again, you could be 22, or with those gloves, 26. So you can see you can actually reach that 25. It's fiddly, and I probably wouldn't care enough to do it, but it's there, and it's worth pointing out. Notice something else, though. The reason I have nauseated with the question mark, I probably should even put this down for something like poisoned as well, or disease. If you're in an effect, first off, So like a poison cloud, a stink cloud, or something else that's causing a disease cloud. Just because you cure yourself initially, you're still in the cloud, right? So just be real clear here. You're going to literally be affected by it. The moment that you cure yourself, it's going to be, make another save. Okay, that sucks. So there is that. But the real reason I put nauseated here is you can't cast spells when you're nauseated. So how the hell are you supposed to cast this on yourself if you're nauseated? Well, let's be clear. There's a possibility you are immune to the nausea condition. And you're like, well, then why give a shit? Well, you care because maybe something will take that immunity away, for one. But two, the nausea condition, let's say you have like a ring that makes you immune to nausea. Fine. You still have the condition as an icon on your character. When you talk about your portrait and all the different buff icons that are next to your face, that also includes debuffs like, are you fatigued? Are you nauseated? Are you poisoned? You will see those there as well. So this basically just strips that away. So again, it's still useful. You will see it go away. I just wanted to point out that if you're nauseated, truly nauseated, you're not going to be able to cast this spell. Constricting Coils. This is the paralysis spell that you kind of dream about, the one that literally is Hold Monster, but it also does damage. It's an amazing spell. This is exactly why Hold Monster was cut and pasted down here, because it does exactly the same thing, plus adds damage. And it's the same level spell. It's the same everything, just it does damage. It is exactly the same school, exactly the same range. Everything is the goddamn same. It just does damage. This is an amazing spell. And again, I know exactly what you're thinking. Well, then why even grab Hold Monster if it's the same level as Constricting Coils? Well, A, doesn't mean that every caster that has access to Hold Monster has access to Constricting Coils. That's not something that I can guarantee. And B, this is again just another throwback, in my opinion, to things like pen and paper. Whereas I would use Constricting Coils in this game, bar none, every time. Because fuck that guy needs to die. Hold Monster, on the other hand, would be something I would use in pen and paper, because maybe there's that bad guy you want to, let's just lock him up. We'll kill all his friends right in front of him and piddle himself. And now we'll go over there, saunter over, and interrogate that son of a bitch. And again, that's why we don't want to kill him. So again, you can see that they're just trying to keep it to the original. I have no problem with that. Just know that Hold Monster is lackluster in comparison to Constricting Coils. It's a solid spell either way you go, and it is a paralysis spell by definition. So again, coup de grace is available. They're flat-footed, guaranteed at that point, so sneak attack is applicable. Has a really nice medium range to it too, so again, a really nice spell. And while yes, it's a true save or suck spell in that if they make the save, it's not affecting them anymore. And even if they fail to save, every round they get a chance to check it, which means even if you're really good at enchanting, your DC check is so high that they're never going to pass it, they can pass it on a nat 20. There's always that 5% chance. So just be aware of that. And why do I point that out? Because you probably want to paralyze that motherfucker, and instead of just leaving him to take constant damage over several rounds, no, you and your teammates are going to get your fucking happy asses over there and kill that motherfucker now. Because you never know when he's just going to fucking break out of it. It may last a round. It may last a full 20 rounds. I can't guarantee any of that shit. But if he's paralyzed, you probably want to capitalize on the chance to do some serious damage now. So I suggest you do so. It doesn't have to be your war priest. It could be someone else. Send over Jathel. She's fun with that scythe. A guaranteed crit, a guaranteed hit. That fucking scythe is going to hit like a brick goddamn shithouse. They'll lop her fucking head clean off. So again, you can see the appeal you can have with a paralysis spell like this. We lump together the cure and the inflict spells because again, they do basically the same thing, just kind of in reverse. One does damage, one does healing, but if it's against undead, the other one heals and then the other one damages. So again, it's basically the same spell. But I lump them together for this reason. But know that there is a saving throw associated with them. It's for when they do damage that we're talking about that, obviously. It doesn't heal a shit ton of damage when we're talking about the healing aspect of it. But that plus 25, again, that is kind of appealing if you get that high. Chances are you're probably keeping it to the 20. But still, 1d8 plus 20, that's 21 to 28 points of healing going out AoE style. It's not amazing for a level 5 spell, but that can be useful. And then if you consider the fact that you might be fighting undead where it could damage them while healing your team at the same time, double use. Awesome sauce. Maybe you're an undead necrolord, son of a bitch, and you have pets out that are skeletons and zombies and whatever else, and you want to heal them and damage the living targets that are clustered on them. Then that's when the mass inflict light wounds is for. So again, you can see the appeal here. These are solid spells. They're not amazing, but I'll definitely have them, or at the very least use them when I convert stuff. So again, you'd have to decide what kind of healer or damaging cleric you are. Are you one that channels negative energy? Are you channeling positive energy? And again, I believe the same applies for a war priest. You get to pick or choose. A disrupting weapon. That's a decent buff. It's on your weapon or a teammate's weapon. Nothing more than just basically turning your weapon into a disruption weapon, where the undead obviously is the one who's affected by this, where the undead that you hit with that weapon basically make a check, save or suck, to see if they straight up just die. It's amazing, fuck you. If they fail it, bam, dead, disruption. Just gotta love that. And again, pretty nice to have something like that on a weapon. Now, it used to be, and that maybe I'm just remembering it from a different game, it used to be that disruption weapons could only be bludgeoning weapons. So, like your mace, your staff, something of that nature. So if that's the case for this spell, be real clear that if you're casting it on, like, say, a sword or a rapier or something that's, piercing or slashing, and it doesn't do anything, or you never notice it firing off, chances are that's what's going on. It's not that the spell's broken. It's that the spell should have set in the tooltip somewhere, only on a bludgeoning weapon. So try it on a bludgeoning weapon. And I wouldn't do your fist for that, because I don't know that the game keeps track of that. Smarterless weapon buff. Put it on, again, a mace or a flail or a quarterstaff or a club, something of that nature, and then see if it still misbehaves. If it works as intended, like I said, it's a solid spell. I'm not saying that I would slot this heavily or even once, but I would slot it if I know I was going into an area where there's definitely going to be undead. We get ready to take a goddamn knee. We're clearly fighting the undead son of a bitch in this area and all his minions, which are probably also undead. Maybe I'd slot this once or twice. And again, doesn't last very long, so it's not like it's going to last you the dungeon. But you get into a sticky, tough area where there's like a lot of undead or something, which undead are known to do, then this would be something that could help you clear a goddamn room real quick and in a hurry. Flame Strike. Now we're talking. AoE spell. Nice evocation damaging spell. Does two different types of damage, or at the very least half the damage is fire. The other half is still fire, or will damage fire resistant or fire immune target. So you can always guarantee that you're going to do some damage, barring spell resistance, spell immunity, of course. And of course, reflex ninjas kind of screw us in a lot of regards. But this is still solid AoE damage. It's not teammate friendly, so be careful where you cast it. Has a really nice range to it. The burst is not amazing as far as how big the circle is, but still, you can hit 2 to 3, 4 guys in that without much effort or concern. The downside for me on this one is the fact that, again, even if they're fire resistant, fire immune, they still take damage. If they make their save, that half damage now gets dropped to quarter damage. So that's really bad. You can, however, intensify the spell still. This is like your last level chance to intensify a spell from level 5 to level 6. And this turns a 15d6 spell into 20d6 of damage now. And that's definitely appealing. Definitely something worth considering. Genie kind. This one's weird. It has a terrible duration, so there's that right off the bat. You have to pick which type of genie you're going to be. Are you going to be associated with electric, acid, fire, or cold, basically, is what we're basically telling you here. Because it will dictate what kind of resistance you have. It will also dictate the type of damage that your weapon will do. And that weapon could be any melee weapon or any, or your unarmed strike, excuse me. The reason I like this spell is because I see unarmed strikes and I get all super excited that, oh my, one level monk dip is going to make my character a badass. Well, if you keep reading and it says any melee weapon, it doesn't matter that it's unarmed strikes. It could be any fucking weapon. So it's not as impressive as I originally thought. I keep seeing unarmed strikes and I get way worked up more than I should. There's some nice fiddly buffs up here. Immunity to difficult terrain is definitely cool. You have the typical tornado legs or whatever that allows you to fly over shit, like all genie, I guess, can. So there's that. A bonus to your con, but it's an enhancement bonus, so obviously you're going to have something better than that by now. Anyway, the other thing is these armor bonus is nice, but it's an enhancement bonus. It's a +4, so it won't stack with other enhancement bonuses, but +4 is pretty goddamn high. You may not have had that by now, and again, so you will appreciate that. And then, of course, the bonuses to all these different saving throws against paralysis, poison, sleep, and stunning effects. That's a nice racial bonus, and that's not something that you probably had to begin with anyway. So again, cool. I'm not going to say no to free stuff. The resistance really is a nice selling point too. It's only 10, but still nice. And the extra damage type, the extra acid or cold or fire or electric to your weapon attack. It's only 1d6, but hey man, it's free. So, yeah, okay. It's just not the best spell, in my opinion. Profane and Sacred Nimbus. Again, these are the ones that fall into those categories of punch me in the face and I'll damage you back, you son of a bitch. But they do more than that, so I should probably give them a little more love than I actually do. It doesn't last long for either of them, which kind of sucks. The damage is lackluster. 1d6 plus up to plus 15 based on your caster level, and I believe you can intensify that, bringing it up to a plus 20. Notice something else here, spell resistance. You also take half damage from magical attacks with the good descriptor if you're using the evil spell, or vice versa. If you're using the good spell, you take half damage from the evil one. And again, if there's an attack that allows you to take half damage if you make the save, if you have this spell on, then it literally cuts it down to nothing. Again, still has to be the good or the evil descriptor, respectively. That's actually not bad. But again, what's the chances you're planning for that? That you know that this prick is going to use a spell that's an evil spell where I can, oh, my Sacred Nimbus is going to protect me from that. You probably not. And again, it doesn't last long enough for it to just be like casting on you before you go into the dungeon. And when it does hit you, yay. No, it's casting on you for this fight and hope that there's a spell that's coming through that's an evil descriptor. And I suppose you could scum save it in a way, I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't, where you find out that, oh, he's using that spell? Oh, shit, do I have Sacred Nimbus? Yes. Bam, Sacred Nimbus on before this fight. Sure, I could totally do that, but it's still one of those where let's just face it, I'm probably not dipping that far into the game to micromanage it to that degree of, oh, that's the kind of spell he used. Well, let me make sure I have this in my spell book. Bullshit. No one's doing that crap. So it's still a good theory, but it's still one that you're probably going to turn away from. Go back one more. Just to point one other thing out. And again, this can all be ignored as far as the damage to them if they're using a melee weapon that has reach, like a spear, something that shoots at basically like 6 foot range or longer, like a bardiche or glaive. They will totally ignore this and not do any damage to them for hitting you. Just so we're clear on that. That's another reason I'm not a fan of these spells. Raise Dead. Raises the dead. It is a very expensive spell in that it costs you a diamond. Not diamond dust. No. Diamond. So it's like 1,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 gold pieces for one of those fucking diamonds. So that gets pricey. And again, same general principle here. When they get res, they're going to have negative levels because it's stressful. But notice that it's 2 permanent negative levels, not like the other one where we saw them dying and we res them within 2 rounds, and they have 1 temporary negative level. No, this is 2 permanent negative levels. What does permanent mean? It means it's permanent. It means it doesn't. You don't get to take a goddamn nap and it goes away. No, sir. You have to literally remove it with something. So you're going to have to learn a spell, or someone else will have to learn a spell to take that shit away. And that's going to be a problem. Also, don't recommend raising people in the middle of a combat, because when you raise dead, they don't come back with full health. That's a resuscitation, I think, is what the name of that spell is. So this one will bring them back, I believe, and they have like a hit point or some shit. So just literally, no, it says that raised creature has a number of hit points equal to its current HD. So literally, if they're level 20, they get 20 HP. Ooh, they're still gonna fucking crumble like a bitty baby. So don't try to res them, especially because it's expensive. In the middle of, I rephrase that. Unless you know for sure you like the turn order, where you can res them, and then the next person that's on the team is maybe the next person on the turn order, and they can like heal them. That's fine. But if not, if it's like a cluster pile, no, you don't res them until the fight's over. I suppose I would do it if I know that I need them to help finish the fight. Like if she has the spell that's going to finish this prick off, damn it, Octavia, get the fuck back up and hope beyond all measure that she can survive it long enough to cast that spell. Because maybe you just need to. So there's caveats, of course, always. But it's still one of those where, it's a bad idea, non-combat. Wait until after. And then think about how you're going to get rid of those negative levels, because again, you're really going to hate that your character, whoever he or she is 2 levels lower. Righteous Might. Yeah. Now we're talking. Get some damage up in the house. This is a spell that you want to have as a cleric. This is the spell that makes a cleric feel like a battle cleric, in my opinion. And again, I know we're talking war priest, still applicable here. You get bigger, so it's like enlarged person, but it's like enlarged person on crack. Not only do you get a bonus to strength, you get a bonus to con. It's +4, and it's a size bonus, which stacks with all kinds of other shit, like your enhancement belts and spells and stuff like that. So a solid increase in your damage potential and your health and your fortitude saves. Yeah, your dexterity goes down. Whatever. You're easier to hit. That's always going to be a thing when you're big and clumsy. You got a nice little bonus to your natural armor. It's only an enhancement bonus, so it's probably not stacking with anything, but you'll take it. I mean, if you don't have that buff, that's at least there. You also get some DR. Remember layers. We like our layers. So this is DR5/evil if you're a good or neutral caster. If you're an evil caster, it's DR5/good. So basically a good weapon penetrates it, or an evil weapon penetrates it. Notice when you get to level 15 or higher, the DR jumps up to now 10. So again, on par with Stone Skin. And again, kind of nice because again, what's the chances you'll find an evil adamantine weapon or a good adamantine weapon? So again, that 10 is pretty much solid now at that point. We don't have to worry about it so much. It doesn't last very long. It's only a personal effect, but it's a solid screw you. And while, yeah, you're clumsy. Yeah, it's harder for you to hit the bad guys because again, you're big and they're tiny. Yeah, it's easier for them to hit you because you're big and they're tiny. All that's applicable here, and this really sucks. But remember, your weapon is also another size category bigger. You have a better reach with your weapon because you're bigger. And as such, that just is a really, really nice thing for someone that's already in the front ranks and meleeing the shit out of bad guys. And again, what does a war priest fucking do? Melees the shit out of stuff. This is a solid, solid buff. Between this and divine power, you become a Ginsu chef like no one's business. And again, a war priest is perfect for shit like this. Really, really nice. Slay Living. It does damage. I know it says Slay Living. It is a death affecting spell. So again, when we talked about death effects earlier, this is an example of one. It's not an instant kill spell. It is a instant kill if they die from it, I suppose. So again, it's one of those where it says like here, the subject might die from damage even if it succeeds at its saving throw. Well, no shit. It took damage. Anything that takes damage could die from it. Durr. Why do you even have to put that in there? It's referring to the fact that it's a death descriptor. So if they die, quote unquote, from this spell, they're not brought the fuck back with those other spells we talked about earlier. So again, kind of nice. The damage is initially 12d6 plus 1 per caster level. Doesn't have a cap, so it probably caps out at 20. So a solid amount of damage. The fact that it's a touch attack is kind of meh. It can miss, but there's sneak attack potential there. It can crit. So again, there's some other fun that you can have with this. Notice that they make that fortitude save. The damage doesn't get cut in half. The 12d6 drops down to a massive 3d6. And that sucks, but the plus 1 per caster level is still there. So it doesn't take away the 20. So I guess that's kind of something, because that would really suck to take the 20 down to a 10. But I don't know that I've done the math on this, that 12d6 to 3d6 was better than if it went to 12d6 to 66. And the 20 caster level points here dropping down to 10 would have been more damage or less damage. But the point's still the same. They're going to save, they're going to take less damage. It's not surprising. So again, kind of annoying. I could see using it once in a while, but it's not something that I care about. And while I say this part about it can miss, it's a melee touch attack. We always have to remind you that for a touch attack, any of them, ray spells, melee attacks, remember they ignore an armor, they ignore a shield, and that means it's easier for you to hit them. And while a cleric may not be really good, for example, like Tristan, and using Slay Living where he has to walk over and boop, touch him on the fucking shoulder, this is a war priest, baby. Their BAB increases at every level. By the time you're level 20, you have a BAB of 20. You're a fucking fighter as far as the game is concerned. For purposes of that BAB, that's an amazing BAB. So the chances that you'll miss is slim. So don't discount that. That's just nice. It's just not the best spell ever. Spell resistance, on the other hand, is a nice buff for you or a teammate. And again, the fact you can cast it on anybody is kind of nice. It's a nice duration to it. And it's spell resistance equal to 12 plus your caster level. So again, if you're not cross-dipping or double-dipping, like doing like a monk dip or something, you'll finish with a solid 20 here. So 12 and 20 is a 32. That's a not insignificant spell resistance. And just so we're clear on how that is penetrated, when you're attacking something with spell resistance, you take their spell resistance, that's basically their quote-unquote armor. How do you penetrate that armor? By casting or rolling a 1d20 and then adding your caster level. This is why it's important that your caster level will be high all the time. So if you're level 20 War Priest, you're at the 20 caster level. 1d20 means that for someone that has a 32, you'd have to roll a 12 or better to penetrate it. You understand that? So again, 20 plus 12 is 32. They have a 32 because they've cast this on themselves, for example, and now they're protected unless you roll a 12 or better. Why does that matter? Well, one, it's another check to make sure that the spell did damage. It could be just completely fucking ignored. And it doesn't just wear off. It's still on you. It's a buff that's lasting. It's not stripped off after the first spell that hits you. No, it's just continually, every spell is going to have a check. Now, maybe the bad guy has high caster levels. He's hot today where the die rolls are in his favor. And everything's going to fucking hit you. And that sucks. But for the ones that miss, that's free, baby. That's just damage you didn't take or an effect that didn't happen on you. You gotta appreciate shit like that. And while 32 may not sound that impressive, remember, if everybody's limited to caster level 20 in this game, bad guys included, that means, again, like I said, at the end of the game, they would have to roll a 12 or better on a 20-sided die. What is that? Why is that so important to me? Well, remember, a 50-50 chance means that they would have to roll an 11 or better. So technically speaking, you got a better than a 50-50 chance to ignore spell damage or spell effects coming your way. So you can see the appeal here. And again, that's assuming they're caster level 20. What if you're level 20 and they're just happen to be 19? Again, it's not a 12 they need now. Now they need a 13. Maybe they need a 14. Maybe they need even more. And you can see, again, the appeal here. Really, really nice buff. And the fact that, like wizards, for example, don't get stuff like this, but this guy does, that's the cincher right there. Really, really cool. Summon spells. We're going to talk about Summon Large Elemental now, but we're also going to talk about Summon Monster 5. A lot of these are overlapping in the buffs and uses that they have. In this regard, you're basically getting a tank. Something that you can slap the fuck out there and let that son of a bitch take the fucking bludgeoning, beating damage while you're casting spells or pre-buffing up, or not pre-buffing, buffing up in the fight now that you got jumped, let's say. The downside of this spell, let's talk about it first. It's a full round to cast it, and this is important to mention because if you're doing a surprise round, you don't have movement and a standard action. That's a full round. Because it's a surprise round, you can either move or attack. That's a half a round, so to speak. And as such, you can't cast spells that say full round then. So notice that if it's the surprise round, you're like, oh shit, but we're in the surprise round. Okay, summon large elemental. No. It'll waste your spell, waste your time. Well, it doesn't waste your spell, but it wastes your time. You did nothing because you start the incantation, then your turn ends, and you don't cast the damn thing. Then the next round, you'd be like, oh, well, the next round will just be almost ready to cast now. Nope, doesn't work that way. You start all over again. So again, don't bother. Shoot something, pre-buff up with a spell that's a standard action instead, or move, whatever you want to do, but basically not something that's a full round. Other than that, the only other real downside, I suppose, to this, well, two. One is if you went, say, Conjurer build. Remember I said that was a possibility for me for a War Priest. I could think of maybe a good Conjuration build for spell-focused Conjuration is what I'm talking about, or spell-focused Necromancy. If I went Conjuration, this is a Conjuration spell. Because I did spell-focused Conjuration, probably, I could also grab two other really important feats. One's called Augmented Summoning, which would benefit this spell. I can also get Superior Summoning, which doesn't benefit this spell. So let's talk about the one that it does benefit. Augmented Summoning, +2 to Strength, +2 to Con, for any of your summons. That includes this little fucker, or big fucker, excuse me. So, a solid Strength buff, a solid Con buff, extra HP, extra Fortitude. You gotta appeal to something as cool as that. That's a pretty good thing to have. For these different elements, there's 4 to choose from. So your fire, air, water, or earth. The downside, and this is why I say it's cool but weird all at the same time, earth and water are my go-to for a reason. Water, if you know the stats, which you don't offhand because you can't read the stats on these little bastards. There's a way around it. I'll show you that here in a second. But if you do water, he has more con at every level. So if he's the small water elemental, he has a lot of con. If he's a medium water elemental, he has more con. If he's a large elemental, he doesn't have more con, he has more strength now. The con still stays increased, but for whatever reason they start to diversify. So at the large elemental, this is where they start getting problematic, where the stat that you associate with them, and again, the fire and air elementals are fine examples of this as well. They get more dexterity when they're small, they get more dexterity when they're medium, and now when they're large, they get strength. Who the fuck gives a shit about strength? They're dex-based characters now. Why would you fucking give them more strength? Well, they're bigger now. So? Who gives a shit? I don't want them to have more strength. I want them to have more dex. And it fucks it all up. So you're thinking, oh, I'm getting a big fire elemental. He's going to be a badass. No, he's not. I mean, yeah, he gets more armor. Yeah, he's bigger, but he's not progressing like you would think. And it just bones you because you're just like, why is he such a pansy? Because A, he's big, which means he's a bigger fucking target. B, he's big, and therefore it's harder for him to hit the smaller targets. C, the thing that you were relying on to be a stat that increased dexterity is not being increased again. It's being increased for strength. And it's something, well, it adds extra damage. Ring a ding ding. A +1 is not worth writing home about. Gives a shit. It's weird. Water, though, he moves from con to now strength. At least that's an appeal because he needed it and he wasn't getting it before. So he's a tough little son of a bitch. The earth one is my favorite because that little bastard starts off when he's a small elemental, he gets strength. When he's a medium elemental, he gets strength. When he's a large elemental, I think he gets con. But so what? That's more HP, he's tougher, and he was still going to be a strengthy motherfucker. And of the others, he's the one that gets the most natural armor bonus naturally. So he is a fucking meat shield like no one's business. That earth elemental is a tough motor scooter. He's the one that I summon routinely. Water, I toy with him too. I summon the fire one when I need to fire damage, for example, like I'm fighting a troll or some shit. But by and large, the fire and the air one kind of suck. And the air one does that spastic move where he sucks all the air out in a goddamn circle with his little whirlwind. And I think that's not teammate friendly. So that's just a bad idea. So unless you needed him, I would not grab the air. Now, I know these stats, and I know these stats for a reason. I want to explain how you could learn these stats for yourself. And I don't have them memorized. I'm not a fucking psycho here. But I am using these routinely enough that I did dip into it to realize what they had to offer. How do you find out these stats? Well, there is another spell in the game that you don't have access to as this type of War Priest. But the Megastu. And so this is how I know this shit. So you can turn yourself into an elemental. A small, a medium, large, or huge elemental if you get elemental body 1, 2, 3, or 4. So if you do that, you can actually see what the fire elemental has because you can actually open up your character sheet once you turn into that form and see, oh, this is what being a small fire elemental gives me. This is what being a small earth elemental gives me. And that's how I found out these stats. So that's what you can do too if you wanted to do that. And that's how I found out that fire and air both get boned when they get to the large and the huge size categories. You're just like, what? That's weird, but whatever. But it's good to know. And this is also how I figured out how the earth elemental has even more natural armor bonus. It's the one thing they get that the others don't. Because again, the water elemental, he has like a smother ability or a grapple ability or whatever the fuck it's called. The fire guy can burn you, set you on fire, I guess. The air elemental does that little whirlwind spinny thing. The earth elemental does what? Nothing. So they gave him just more armor. But fuck yeah. So that's why I like him. That's why he's my favorite. Just so we're clear on this. Again, just like all the other summons, these don't last very long. But again, by now, it's lasting long enough for that fight. So if you get jumped or if you just like, you know what, I need something out there, just taking the fucking brunt of shit. Fire elemental, have at the, cast your guy out there and let him have some fun. But by and large, that's what you're going to use these guys for. Summon Monster 5, again, just like we talked about the other ones, I'm not going to reiterate all the points, but to point out this would also benefit from Superior Summoning, which is the one where, again, instead of 1d3, we get 1d3 plus 1. Instead of 1d4 plus 1, we get 1d4 plus 2. Instead of 1, well, okay, we still get 1. And that's why it doesn't work on this, because you're only always going to summon 1 per spell. So that's why Superior Summoning doesn't work on it. But this one, it will work on 2 of the 3 summons. Notice this one is restricted to an alignment. If you are evil, you get the little goat beard bread cat bastards. These are my favorite. If you are a good or neutral type, you get the Berlani Azada motherfucker. And this is the bastard that casts a lightning bolt, lightning bolt, lightning bolt. And hey man, maybe you're protected from electricity for you and or your team. That's cool. If you're not though, he's a bad son of a bitch to invite to the party because he will ruin your team. He gives no fucks about whether your team is in the goddamn line of fire. He's just like, blap, blap, lightning bolt, I see a bad guy. Oh, I see a net. And he's fucking just shooting shit all over the fucking place. You tard boy, stop touching shit. So when you summon 1, it's bad. But when we get to level 6, you can summon like 3 to 4 of those little fuckers. So you can see how that can be really bad if you're not protected from the lightning. So be careful with those. I like the evil one. This is, well, again, another reason why I might make an evil conjurer war priest or an evil conjurer necrolord of obvious reasons. But you'd be like, well, why be a conjurer that's evil? Because why not? Why is that a question? But this would be why I would do this. And again, they're pretty badass. I like these guys. I love the dire wolves. The extra minor lizards are just tough son of a bitches. Remember, all these guys benefit from your augmented summoning, so +2 to strength, +2 to con. You'll, of course, appreciate that. The dire wolves, because they're wolves, I believe they all have the trip ability. So having 2 to 4 of those little fuckers out, again, I'm assuming you have augmented summoning and superior summoning. Having 2 to 4 of those little fuckers out at any given time, you're tripping people all over the fucking place. And they're definitely good meat shields at this point. Again, don't last long, but they're still pretty damn durable, I'd say, at that point. True Seeing, nice buff spell. Really is a really nice buff spell. Solid protection for you or a teammate, whoever you cast it on. You're ignoring blur and displacement effects, and of course you can see invisible creatures now, so invisibility is a thing of the past. Again, a solid spell. Only once, one person gets activated this on, so that's a problem, I suppose. Just cast it multiple times, but I would just cast it on the person who matters the most. And while I would like to assume that's me, it could be the person that's going to tank or the person that's going to attack them, like Octavia. You don't want her missing, so give her True Seeing. Here, hon, make sure you see your target. Poof, oh good, displacement doesn't work on them anymore. Bam, 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 she hits them with her fire beam spells. So you can see the appeal. Vine Trap, this is an interesting one. Another paralysis spell, but it does multiple things here. Again, so it's in the vein of Constricting Coils, but again, different. 1, it's a conjuration. 2, it's a reflex save, not a will save, which is another appealing trait here. Notice that there's 2 saves to this spell, minimum. The first round, they all make a save. Whether they do or not, they try to. If they make it, they're not paralyzed, but they are entangled. That's to your benefit, because that's a massive -6, I want to say, to their dexterity, which means their reflexes are now shit. That's appealing because the next save they make, again, is another fucking reflex save. So again, they're now at a penalty for the following ones. So it's going to last for multiple rounds, probably. But guaranteed, it's going to last for at least one. Well, not guaranteed. Spell resistance and immunity and blah, blah, blah. But assuming it lands, it's not a save or suck spell. It's a save and something still happens spell. They make their save, they're still entangled, and they're continuing to take damage every fucking round. I think that starts on round 2. And it's point physical damage, piercing damage. But better than that, while it's lame damage, it is cold iron damage, which means if they have DR whatever / cold iron, like the Fae usually do, they will take damage from this spell. It's kind of a nice little fuck you to the Fae, and there's a lot of Fae in the game. So this is a pretty decent spell to have, in my opinion. And they're the ones that the Fae are routinely good at having high dexterity, so taking their dexterity down 6 points, even if it's temporary, is a nice fuck you to those little prick bastards. So again, I appreciate this. It has the longest range in the game for a spell, so you gotta love that. So you just shoot shit at a fucking distance and start the fight proper. And then the second save, remember, even if they make that first save, they're entangled. If they fail the save, they're still going to save on round 2, 3, and on up until they make the second save. Okay, it's the second save that's the important one, in that if they make, whenever, I should say, they make the second save, that's when the spell ends. Okay, that's when it becomes a save or suck spell proper. But that first round, it's still guaranteed that even if they make the save, something's going to happen. They're still entangled, they're still taking damage, and fuck those guys. So again, I like this spell. I would love this spell if it weren't for one thing. Why does something like conjuring a goddamn vine from the ground offer spell resistance? Makes no fucking sense to me. I'm sure that's pen and paper worthy. It's not the point. It's stupid. It's like when you have spell resistance to web. What? What? And I don't think that's actually true. I'm just using that as an example. It's one of those where it does not make sense. It is a physical thing that's out there now. How do you have spell resistance to that shit? But, whatever. Rant over. Point is, it's still a solid spell, and the fact that it is, again, a reflex save instead of a will save. High utility now. Again, the fact that you have it, and probably Constricting Coils in your repertoire, is, oh, I'm fighting a ninja bastard. Don't use this one. Use the will save, fucker. Okay, I'm fighting the wizards or the fighter. Okay, this one's applicable. They're probably not the most reflexive son of bitches out there. Lock them down with a nice Vine Trap. And again, if they are paralyzed, just to harp on this point, remember, they're paralyzed. They are coup de grace material. They have sneak attack potential because they're flat-footed, guaranteed. All that shit's still applicable when they're paralyzed. But know that the moment they make the second save, the spell ends. Which means if they fail the first save and they're paralyzed and entangled, who cares? The paralyzed is the important part. Every round thereafter, if they make the save, in round 2, round 4, round 20, whatever, they make that save, it's not that the paralysis now ends and they're still entangled. No, no, no. The whole fucking spell ends. Okay, so again, like I said, the first round is just, are they paralyzed, are they not? After that, every round thereafter, if they make the save, whatever condition they're under in this spell now ends. And that's kind of weird, but it's easy enough to understand. In Greater Command, the new spell, AoE version of Command, lasts longer. Instead of 1 round, it's 1 round per level. Who cares? It's a save or suck spell, but the fact that it's AoE and teammate friendly, I could see maybe slotting it once just to toy around with it. But you get like 3 different commands that you get to utter. Halt, flee, something else that I always forget. So there is some fun to be had here, but it's not that big of a deal to me, so I kind of pass on it. Major Curse. It's a curse that's major. It's just an upgraded version of Curse. You can shoot it at range now, which is fucking awesome. Instead of touching him on the fucking shoulder, it's still going to be a touch attack, though I'm fairly certain. It's a save or suck spell proper. It's a permanent debuff if they fail that save, though. And again, if they try to cure it, they're at penalty to cure it. But now here's the downside of that. No one does remove curse in this game except for you and your team. So while I'm sure that's pen and paper worthy, it's still one of those where it's like, who gives a shit? I appreciate they added it. But it's still one of those where no one fucking cures themselves with curses in this fucking game. So, yeah. And I originally thought that +5 DC was for the initial check. And I'm like, fucking baller. No, if you read the tooltip, it says for removing the curse. Not being cursed. For removing the curse. It's a +5 to the DC check for them to try to strip it off them with a remove curse spell or something similar. So again, kind of a bummer. But know that it is level 5 versus bestow curse, and therefore the DC check will be higher just by default. So there's that. And again, if you're going to be a Necrolord, fucking major curse that son of a bitch. And it's the typical curses, nothing else different here. It's all the same shit that you get to choose one of these for. And my favorite being Curse of Deterioration, because it's a straight up fuck you to all kinds of cool shit that we care about. But I can see the appeal for fucking over their strength or their con or their mental stats. It's up to you. Communal Airwalk, just an AoE version of it, 10 minute per level, so a really nice duration for you and your team. Doesn't make you move faster. I always thought it did. Maybe I'm thinking of a different mod. But this one just basically allows you to be immune to difficult terrain and ground-based effects. Things like Web, Grease Spell. It doesn't make you immune to Obsidian Flow or Tar Pool for the initial spike of damage. Be real clear on this. But after that initial round of damage, you can run through it unimpeded. The downside is for Tar Pool does damage every round. So, if you end your turn in the Tar Pool, you will fucking take damage. But if you're leading people through it with like a merry fucking bastard, running through it and all the way through into the other side of it, where you stop your turn just outside of the range of the Tar Pool, you won't be affected by it because it only starts at the start of your turn. So, always end your turn outside of those effects, in my opinion. The AI in this game is buggy as fuck, and those bastards are stupid, and will run right through the fucking fire pits of hell to try to get to your ass and burn and slow themselves down all the way while they're doing it. This is why you use spells like this, in my opinion. Wall of Blindness. It's another one of those wall spells where, again, it's fiddly. Ignore the tooltip for how it's fucking cast. The range probably is accurate. Other than that, you ignore the burst. What it works is your character's here. Let's say you're clicking there. Draw a straight line between you and where you click, and then go left and right. That's where the wall's going to show up. It's relatively easy to line it up, but sometimes you'll click it in a way where you think you're going nice and straight, so it'll be left and right, and instead it's going to be left and right, but at a fucking angle. So you may not hit everybody that you want. This is why I'm not a fan of spells like this as much, and it's not teammate friendly. It kind of sucks, but it is permanent blindness if they do the save or suck and they suck it. They're permanently blinded. That's a nice buff for you and your team because that's basically full concealment. You are invisible if they can't see you. So there's that, but it's not that great of a spell. I'd probably not use it. Fickle Winds, another great spell you would think. It has a nice duration, but it's not cast on you. It's cast on dirt. Why is that important? Because the dirt is what's protected, and anything around that dirt is what's protected. So you have to stand stationary. So that nice duration is fucking useless. For one fight, you'll be protected. After that, you're going to leave that fucking dirt patch, right? So, yeah, whoops. Oh, shit. I suppose you could lead the bad guys back to the dirt patch, go to the next room and then draw them back to this area where you're still protected, but that seems way too fiddly, and I'm not going to do that shit. But for fights where you're really being hammered by archer attacks, this is amazing. This is the one that ranged weapon attacks will not penetrate it into the circle. Shooting out of the circle, on the other hand, it's perfectly fine. So you can stand in it with your archers and just pop, 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 shoot fuckers left and right. And all the archers are out there. They're not going to be wise and go like, oh, we're not hitting them. I guess we'll melee. No, they just keep fucking shooting like doofuses should. And then now it's your turn to take them out. So it's kind of cool for those situations, but it is very situational. Still a very cool spell, and I appreciate that the modders added it. Level 6 spells. Mass Blessing of Luck and Resolve. We have Chains of Light. Eagle Soul. Mass ability buffs. There's like 4 of them. Blade Barrier. Cold Ice Strike. Mass Cure or Inflict Moderate Wounds. Greater Dispel Magic. Elemental Assessor. Heal or Harm. Hellfire Ray. Inspiring Recovery. Plague Storm. Summon Huge Elemental. Summon Monster 6. Banishment. Undeath to Death. Joyful Rapture. Windwalk. And again, Conjuration makes a nice showing. Necromancy makes a solid case for itself again. Hell, even Evocation's got a little bit of love this time. Again, solid choices, Conjuration and Necromancy, if you want to go War Priest and focus on a school, in my opinion. Mass Blessing of Luck and Resolve. I can't like this spell. At this point, it's just too little too late. By now, you're probably buffed better than this, and it's just not something I give a rat's ass about. And it only is protecting against fear. That's it. It's nothing special about this. Change of, well, I should say it's AoE, sorry. Change of Light, on the other hand. This is the paralysis spell that you always wanted to have. This is the one that's not only a reflex save instead of a will save. There is no spell resistance on this motherfucker. This is amazing fuck you to the bad guy. Yes, it's still a save or suck spell. Yes, they get to check every fucking round. But so fucking what? If they're paralyzed for 1 round, I can capitalize on that. If they're paralyzed for 20 rounds, I can capitalize on that. So as long as I have a decent Conjuration, remember we said Conjuration could be one of the schools that I focused on as a War Priest. This would be an amazing spell for you now to make sure that shit fucking locks up a target and then go over there and again beat that motherfucker to death. That's the goal of this spell. And that's all it does, but it does it well. Amazing spell, highly recommended. Eagle Soul, another spell that's an amazing spell, highly recommended. If you're good. If you're not good, you are affected in a negative way. You still get the buff, but if you're neutral, you are sickened. If you're evil and cast a spell, you get the buff, but then you're staggered. Well, that sucks because if you're staggered, you can't do anything. So why does the buff fucking help you? It doesn't. Well, what if you're immune to staggered? Or maybe you have something that makes you immune to being sickened. You can see that you could still cast this spell then. So that's kind of something, I guess. But basically, this would be one that you would want on a good person build. And this is an amazing spell. Sacred bonus to armor class. Sacred bonus to strength. Resistance to acid and fire. It may be lame, but it's there and it's free. A sacred bonus on intimidation checks against evil targets. Fucking awesome, especially if you're doing that Corn Against Smash, Dreadful Carnage type build. And again, you're a strength-based motherfucker, probably, as a War Priest, so why not have a sacred bonus to strength, too? Remember, this was with Divine Power and this with Righteous Might. Holy shit, you're hitting stuff like a goddamn brick shit house. These are amazing spells that you have. They don't last long, but so what? For that one tough fight, you puff, buff, and man, it's time to go to town. It is an amazing combo that you get here. You get a bonus to initiative checks. You get regenerative abilities, fast healing too, so you heal 2 hit points every fucking round. Awesome. And then you have, if it's an evil creature that you're fighting, anytime you have a critical chance to hit, which means that, let's say you're using the high crit range weapon, 18, 19, or 20, you roll that. Remember, normally you have to re-roll to confirm the crit. Not anymore. You confirm it automatically if it's an evil target. So literally, confirming crits. You're critting left and fucking right. Just beat the shit out of some bitch. Just an awesome spell. Amazing. Can't say enough good things about it. The only real downside, I guess, would be that it's 1 round per level. And of course, the alignment restriction. Your AoE buff spells, your Bear's Endurance, Bull Strength, Eagle, Splendor, and Owl's Wisdom. You've seen these before. There's just AoE versions of them. And again, I know there's probably better gear for you and your team. This is kind of a waste. Blade Barrier, on the other hand, this one's interesting. It can be intensified in that it caps out to 15d6 at 15 caster levels, but you can't cast level 7 spells. Well, that doesn't mean you can't find a Meta Magic Rod of Intensify. So do that, and then cast this, and it'll be 20d6 of damage back, caster level 20, of course. Decent spell, nice duration on it. This would be the spells that we would use in a pen and paper setting where you're like, oh shit, we shouldn't have walked into this room. Everyone back the fuck out. I cast this at the doorway and we fucking hightail it out of there. Let the bad guys run through the fucking piercing wall of blades while they're attacking us. Chances are some of them will die and it'll deter the others from wanting to run through it, hopefully. But that game doesn't do that. It's still good for setting up stuff. And again, if someone's paralyzed, for example, this is something you could set at their feet and let them just constantly take damage too, I suppose. Or again, get groups clustered on the War Priest, which is a nice tanky motherfucker. Have him cast it, not at his feet, but just in front of him so he's not in the effect. And again, boom, they're all just daring to stand toe-to-toe with me. They're going to constantly take piercing damage from these blades that are sticking up out of the goddamn ground. I believe it's physical damage. Fairly certain I tested that, but they look like they're force damage because they're like white glowing piercing swords, magical swords piercing them. So I could be mistaken on that. But the point still is that's solid damage and you definitely want it. It's just fiddly for setting it up. So that's the downside. And again, I'm used to Neverwinter Nights 2 where this was two different versions of the spell, where there's Blade Barrier, where there's a wall, which is where this spell is, or the one where you have Blade Barrier centered on your character and it's just you swirling around blades around you where you're not affected, but anyone that's around you, whether it's front and back, left and right of you, they're taking damage. I like that spell. It's not in this game, sadly. Cold Ice Strike, another swift action spell. And by the way, I should have pointed out that this is a swift action as well for Eagle Soul. Sorry about that. Cold Ice Strike is a swift action spell, and again, this allows you to cast a spell and then cast another spell, or cast a spell and move and attack. You can see the appeal of this stuff. This is the oh shit spell, where you just like fuck them, damage, and goes off your hand. Solid damage, again, can be intensified, not for you, but with a meta magic rod. Cold Ice Strike is a nice spell, just doesn't have a very nice range to it. 30-foot line is a lot smaller than you think. That's short range, but it is a beam proper, so it's an AoE spell like Lightning Bolt is. Reflex save for half damage, does decent cold damage. You will like this spell. You won't slot it heavily, but I'll definitely keep one in my back pocket. Your mass cure and inflict moderate wound spells. Again, nothing more to say about them. It's the better heal. Plus 30, cast roll to 30 is not really achievable. But you can, with gear and other fiddly bits, you can probably get it all the way up to maybe a 26 or 28. But again, it's not amazing, but it is there. Greater Dispel Magic. I want to like this spell. Honestly, Dispel Magic is my go-to, and it's my go-to for a reason. It's the one of these two that can actually dispel AoE effects. Grease, Web, Stinking Cloud, Dispel Magic can make it go away. Doesn't mean it'll work. They'll try. But Greater Dispel Magic cannot do that. And it's very weird that it can't. You would think it's the better version. Why can't it do the thing that the weaker version does? I don't know. What it does, though, is you can either target a person with this spell and strip them of multiple buffs, or you can target an AoE and strip a buff off of all kinds of dudes. Definitely cool, but then again, I'll use it, but it's still not one that's like, wow, this is amazing. It's just, it's just a spell magic. Elemental Assessor. Raise spell, so a touch attack. So sneak attack and crit potentials there. Does lame damage on the initial spike of damage. Only hits once. However, it ticks for more damage after. So let's explain how that works. It does all 4 different types of elemental damage, not counting sonic, of course. So acid, cold, fire, and electric. 2d6 of each. Whichever does the most damage, or if there's a tie, whichever did the damage first. Let's be real clear on this. So let's say acid did 12 and so did cold. But acid was the first thing to hit. Then acid would be the thing that follows up. But whatever does the most damage, it ticks for 1 to 4 rounds after that initial hit. It's automatic damage at that point and does 4d6 of damage of that elemental type. So again, in our initial estimation, acid, let's say. So we'll do 1 to 4 rounds of acid for 4d6 of damage. Tick, 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 maybe. Maybe once, maybe 3 times, maybe 2, 4 times. But because there's a die roll, this is the part you need to pay attention to. That means Empowered and in Maximize can take hold here. And again, you can't do that. You're level 6, and that's as high as you can cast. So, Meta Magic Rods, gear, anything that can allow you to empower and maximize this makes this an amazing amount of damage spell. But again, you still have to wait for the tick, tick, ticks. But think about 12 points of damage, 12 points of damage, 12 points of damage, 12 points of damage if you maximize it. And if you empower that too, now it's 18, 18, 18, 18, probably. Whatever they're resistant to, you'll see it. So this is a really good spell, hence the name of the spell, the Assessor part, figuring out, like, if you didn't know that, oh, that son of a bitch happens to be immune to acid and cold, and acid he's resistant to, but electric goes right through. That's what this spell is made to do, to elucidate. Oh shit, electric works lightning bolt time, motherfucker. So that's what this spell is about. But I do like the fact that, there's all these die rolls. You can have some serious fun with, empowering and maximizing it. Because think about that. Guaranteed 4 rounds, guaranteeing 6 rounds if you empower it 2, and guaranteeing that it's 24 damage. No, wait, because you empowered it, that's half more, so it would be 36 damage guaranteed on every fucking tick for 6 fucking rounds. That's a solid amount of fucking damage, man. You just have to wait for it to tick, tick, tick. But if it's something that, he's not a target that's crucial, that he must die now, but he can die soon, hit that motherfucker with this, the empowered and maximized version ideally, and go boom, walk away and fight someone else while he's constantly spasming from whatever damage type that's hitting him every fucking round. I could see this being fun. Again, it can miss and all that typical bullshit, but whatever. Harm and Heal. Decent spells. Amazing spells, quite frankly. That 150 healing or 150 damage, you can't fucking turn that shit down. And again, remember, if you're undead or you're working on Jathel, who is undead, Harm heals her for up to 150. Think about, a war priest that's undead in the front ranks taking a goddamn beating. Maybe you just, you're buffed up to the nines, you're fucking got your armor and your sword and board in it, you're crushing shit left and right, but a couple nasty fucking sneak attacks or critical hits come through. It's going to happen. Remember, you have the best armor. Chances are the thing that's going to hit you would be something that could crit. So if it does crit, and you just take a fucking shit ton of damage, and your health goes from, like, let's say 300 down to 150. Oh, fuck. Harm, because you're undead. You heal yourself for 150. Bam, you're back in it, bitch. Same with heal. If you're not undead, cast it. 150. Bam, back up to fucking full. Or pretty goddamn close. You can see the appeal of these spells. Really, really nice. Can be used on others. Obviously, to damage, whether we're talking undead, you heal them for damage, to damage them, I should say. Harm to heal undead, harm to damage living targets, obviously. The one caveat here is heals a little better in that it does all this other cool shit for those that it does heal. So if you're undead, you don't get the benefit of this on this spell. You'd have to use heal on you, and that would damage you because you're undead. But the ability to remove ability damage, blinded, confused, dazed, dazzled, disease, exhausted, fatigue, nauseated, poison, sickened, aged, done. That's a lot of shit. Notice that heal does not remove negative levels or restore permanently drained ability score points. So that's a thing. But there's other spells for that. Solid spells. You definitely want at least one of these. Hellfire Ray. And you may say, well, you're a war priest. It's probably strength-based. Why would you ever want ray spells like this? Remember, your BAB is not impeded like a cleric. You're not 3/4 progression. You don't finish with a 15 BAB by the end of your build. You finish with a solid fucking 20. You probably are going to hit. Remember, it is a touch attack. You're ignoring armor. You're ignoring shield bonuses. It's probably going to fucking hit. Even without you getting, say, point blank shot, precise shot, stuff like that. You still are probably going to fucking hit the target, at least with one of the 3 beams. And it does solid damage. And it's 2 different damage types. So again, if they're fire immune, they're still going to fucking take some damage from something. And there's no saving throw. So a solid spell. I'll definitely slot it at least once just to shoot stuff. Especially at like the start of the fight. I always like just to light somebody up. Just to say, fuck that guy. Because it's always fun to see someone drop when the fight starts. And all the bad guys, I know they can't do this in the game. But they all kind of collectively, in my mind, shit themselves. And go, oh fuck, that was our main tank. And that's just funny to me. So again, I like this, and again, the fact that it can crit, the fact that there's sneak attack potential here is worth noting. Inspiring Recovery. This is the other spell we were talking about, that can heal, damage, res, just like the one we talked about at level 5, but it does more than that. So it does all the same stuff before. The healing might be different here, because it's 1d8 per 2 caster levels, so a max of 10d8. It's a lot of healing. But, if they're rezzed within those 2 rounds, and anyone in range of them can see that on your team, they get a bonus. We get a bonus to attacks, damage rolls, and saving throws for a minute. So there is a little, like, rallying the team, yeah, inspiring recovery. And that's the only real difference here. And again, the same other things as well. So there's a time limit, the 2 rounds to resuscitate them. Doesn't work on those that are under the death effects from death effect spells. But this one has range to it, so it's not a touch attack. So there's the other reason I like this one, I suppose. And so of the 2, this would be the one I'd slot. I don't know it would get a lot of use, Remember, you can heal with this too. It doesn't have to be a dead person. You can heal with it. You can also damage undead with it. And 10d8 is a lot of healing / damage. It's not amazing. It's not like heal level where it's 150, but 10 to 80, that's still a good range. It's still worth having in your back pocket. Plague Storm. You make a storm of a plague. The end. Oh, I'm sorry. It's a fiddly one. It's a storm. You're in the cloud. It's kind of annoying. The cloud drifts away, so it kind of moves depending on the way you're facing. So if you're facing towards the bad guy, obviously when you cast a spell, it'll drift past them eventually. If you turn the other way, like turn your back to them, it'll drift back into them. You'll play with it. It's annoying, but it's only really useful for those of you that are immune to disease or have a high enough fortitude save that you don't worry about being diseased, because some of this shit can get nasty real fast. Summon Huge Elemental, as well as, of course, our Summon Monster 6. Same things we talked about in the past. More, better, same. Fire and earth, air still suck. Water is getting even more strength, I believe, at this point, and Earth Elemental is just getting more con. Might even get more strength. But definitely is your go-to guy. Water or Earth are my two favorites in this regard. Tough motherfuckers at this point. And fucking huge. Hence the name. Some Monster 6, again, same general principle, but again, notice that the alignment specificity means that if you're evil, you're Soul Eater, and that's not undead, that's something else. It's an outsider, I think. They're fucking mean, and they do like wisdom damage. They're fucking awesome to have. And of course, the extraplanar Axiomite. Those are kind of like the Berlania Zadas, and notice that we're getting even more of those fuckers if you're good or neutral. But the Axiomite is similar, but he's more of a meleeer, I want to say, than these guys who are kind of ranged bowmen. But they both have the electric spells, and these guys has his own casting shit too. Like you might see them cast like Mirror Image or some shit. So there is some utility there, but again, I favor the evil ones in this spell, in my opinion. They're the best. I like the Soul Eater. Mean, floating-looking ghost motherfucker. Undeath to Death. Beside the Diamond Dust component, this is an amazing spell. It's a save or suck spell, proper. AoE, teammate friendly. Supposedly, I'd check that with Jaethal with a scum save, though. Don't get crazy with this shit. But it could definitely just trivialize undead fights. Just a straight fuck you to massive undead. Banishment, again, another one of those spells that if you need it, you'll know kind of thing. It's a good spell when you have bad guys that are constantly summoning pets, and you're just like, you know what, fuck you. You don't deserve multiple pets. Poof. And unlike Dismissal, where it's one pet, this is an AoE version. So it's not teammate friendly, so your pets and teammate summons could go away as well, so be careful with that shit. But by and large, if you're fighting bad guys that are doing multiple summons, make them go away, and it really pisses them off. And yeah, the game kind of, not cheeses in the way that, like, if he's a pet summoning son of a bitch, chances are he has more than one spell queued up that's a pet summoning spell. That motherfucker's probably got like 8, 9 of those fucking pets waiting to fucking rock and roll. So wait until it gets like 2 or 3 of those fucking castings out, and then just say, fuck you. And that's what I use Banishment for. Joyful Rapture is decent. This is an AoE. It's the fact that it literally removes emotion effects, obviously negative emotion effects, like confusion or fear. That's an emotional effect. So there's a variety of things that this could be used on. It's okay, and this AoE, decent sized burst on no less, which is appreciated. And I do love this fact that it's curing intelligence, wisdom, or charisma damage to all allies in the area. That's not bad. I'm not saying I would use it for that, but if they had that, and I just happened to still, oh, you got 1 intelligence back. Fucking cool. I didn't even realize I had a penalty right now. That's usually how that works for me. But this is a decent spell. Windwalk. Nice teammate buff for overland travel, long duration. Notice that it's personal effect, but notice the speed of your group along global map increases to 20 miles per hour. So again, you're moving faster on the overland map. This would be really useful early levels. Sadly, you're not going to get it till late. This is like level 16 that you pick this up. But this would be something you could use to cross the map in short order, so that you can not only explore more, but also so that you're not impeded by time limitations quite as much. So I kind of dig that part. But other than that, it's more of the fucking same. You're just basically a cloud person, and you're fucking walking everywhere super fast. And that's basically it for this video, guys. Now notice we have more. Like I said, we are going to do the cleric spells level 7 through 9. If level 0 through 6 are identical, and so far it seems that they are, I'm going to do again another cursory once over on it just to make sure. You'd be surprised at how different some spell books actually are. For example, I would assume that the Inquisitor spells would be extremely similar to this one, the War Priest. They are. They overlap quite a bit. But there's a lot, like a lot of different spells that the Inquisitor has that the Clerics and the War Priest don't get. So we'll have to do that separately. And again, when it can be referred back to this video, I will do so. I'll still probably put the slide up where I say, oh, this is what Blade Barrier does. Go back and see my War Priest video when we talk about it. But know that it's a good spell, know that it's a bad spell, and I'll probably zip through some of those very quickly. But this is not the next one I'm going to do. It's not going to be Cleric. I think I want to do Magus. Magus is my favorite, as you guys know. I'll probably do Blood Rager as well. And I'll probably Magus. And, oh, the Summoner is definitely a new class out there that I wanted to touch on because it sounded cool. I'm not going to do the Psychics. And it's only because I seem to hate the Psychics, which is weird because I always play like a Psychic character when I play like, you know, City of Heroes. I always like to be the telekinetic or the telepathic. I don't know why. I don't like Psychics in D&D. It's just, they're very fiddly. They have a lot of mechanics to them that's just very odd to me, and I just don't like them. Spells I can understand. They do this. They do that. We're done. Psychic. Oh, did you drain them? Did you emotionally drain them? Did you do this? Did you do that? This will buff you, and you will get psychic points for blah, blah. I don't fucking care. It's like the Kineticists. I know they're OP. I don't give a shit. I would never play Kineticist. They bore me to tears. I love the Magus, as you guys know, and I do think that seeing what the Magus has to offer for spells would be pretty appealing. So that will be the next videos that I do, not counting, of course, any video that I do for like a build, which I'm still trying to remember which ones I need. So again, for those of you that stayed this long, thank you. Feel free to point out which video I've forgotten. I know I have a strength-based Slayer build that I still need to get out, but job hunting is always taking time, and I really need to find myself some work. So that's going to have to be shelved until I'm in a better place. Probably like the holidays, sadly, which is not too far away, but it's probably going to take some time before I can get back to doing a proper build video. But again, know that the next 3 videos should be similar to what we did with the War Priest. 0 through 2 spells for the Magus, 3 through 4 spells for the Magus, and then 5 through 6 spells for the Magus. It will probably be a separate video at the end for those that have Magus builds where we get to pick from the Wizard spellbook. So I'm trying to think if that makes sense. No, I'm not going to do that. It'll be just like the War Priest. Why do I say that? Because while you can, with these mods, get Wizard spells. For example, as you use there's an Arcana that you can pick that will allow you to get a Wizard spell or 2 as you level up. So stuff that the Magus doesn't normally have access to. The problem with that is the Wizard spell list is freaking huge, and I would have to cover every Wizard spell, which I'm going to do. So we'll just do that when we get to the Wizard parts, and just refer to the fact that, oh, you remember, Magus could get this too, if they do X, Y, or Z. So I'll refer back to that. But the Magus videos will only include spells that only Magus can get. Well, only Magus. That the Magus can get naturally as they level from 1 to 20. There you go. That makes more sense. So with that, my name is Brother Meaton. Please like, subscribe, comment down below. Thank you guys for staying this long for this video. I know this is not what everyone wanted to see. Lots of people want to see the game. But I still find this extremely useful. Especially for me, it kind of helps orders my thoughts on how I would make a character, what kind of spells I would like. And again, like I said for the War Priest, I like Righteous Might. I like Divine Power. I like a Sacred Soul, or whatever the hell it was called. Eagle Soul. There's amazing spells out there for making just a tanky son of a bitch with huge ass strength. You could really push a character through the fucking roof with some solid War Priest spells. I think if you make a solid War Priest, you would have fun. With that, though, I'll see you guys soon. Bye now.